Welcome, everybody, school counselors from across the United States for the first ever counselor coffee talk. So we're excited. Peg and I are excited here. So hopefully you all are too. So give us 1 or 2 minutes. We had lots of for those of you right on time, appreciate it, but lots of your peers want to tune in today too. And in my experience, there's lots of unforeseen break-ins in your day, students popping in here and there, etc. Give us 1 or 2 minutes and then we'll get rolling here.
Be fun though, Carp, is why doesn't everybody just put in the chat as everybody's coming in where you are in the country? It'll be fun to see where we have people coming in from. Gonna make sure the chat is all enabled here. It looks like I did it. Yeah, just pop in the chat. Arizona, another Arizona, Bellevue. Yay! That's right by me. Washington. We got Midwest, we got Jersey, awesome. That's where I grew up, New York.
Melrose, baby. We got some Melrose, Mass near me, Philly, New Hampshire. Good representation here.
Yeah, awesome.
Houston, your old stomping grounds, Peggy?
Yep, my kids are Texans.
Yeah. Awesome. Listen, let's dive in because we got a fair amount to cover on our, like I said, our kind of debut of this program. Now, obviously, I know a percentage of you at least tuned in to learn about kind of do's and do nots for appealing for more financial aid and or scholarships for colleges, which is a hot topic for class 2023 right now. So I promise we are going to get there. But if you'll humor us for a couple minutes, I'd like to give you a little bit of a sneak preview about how we got here and why we're here. And then Peg and I will introduce ourselves for those of us that we're new faces to. So my name is Matt Carpenter. I'm just north of Boston and Salem, Massachusetts. I've been doing this whole financial aid thing my entire career. So coming up on 20 years now, and it all just stemmed from my own experience. Being the oldest of 3 kids with 2 clueless parents, being a 18-year-old that didn't care outside of going to figure out where they're going to go have the most fun in college. Not unlike a lot of folks, some of that decision making led to not the best end result. And again, I wasn't alone. And that was a situation that I was just talking to Peg about, which she knows it well, where like I had a decent amount of support and it was still, we made all these mistakes, right, that were avoidable. Never mind these families that have 2 household family dynamics or single parents or a language barrier or are recent immigrants, right? I know probably a decent amount of you folks are having some influx of families from Ukraine and all those challenges that come with it that oftentimes filter down to you all, right? So the whole kind of point of this, our new initiative we're doing this year, 2023, largely led by me, supported by Peg and some other folks on our team, is being a back office of sorts for you school counselors, right? As a lot of my buddies are on here that are in that community. I've had great relationships for a long time. And I always say, hey, bring your questions to us. When you get that tricky question that walks in the office or somebody you're not comfortable advising on how they should borrow for a college or something, bring it to us and we'll answer it. But I know there was some hesitation. Some of my friends are like, we don't want to bother you too much. And is this appropriate to ask? We're leaning into that and just saying, bother us for everything, right? This is what we want to be here for you. We set up a help desk, a specific email address that's just for school counselors. It's counselor@collegeaidpro.com. Any questions you have, send them to us. And I'm the first backstop there, right? At least initially, till we get an idea of what type of volume we're going to get here. Everything goes to me. I think I'm going to be a good resource to have your answer and know where to go to get it. We're going to do this live every other Wednesday at noon, right? We're hoping to just make this a part of your cadence and just pop in with any questions. Bring your students in if they have questions. Use each other as a community, working and not working for you. We want to make it hopefully a collaboration. We're going to be giving you shareable information, right? Each week, and I'll give you a teaser before we dive in here, but we're going to give you links and articles to share. So anyways, we just want to be here for all your pain points, specifically as it pertains to financial aid and scholarships. We hope you think of us and we're happy to help. We know how impossible your job descriptions are in a lot of ways. You're right. Just one of you to serve however many students. And maybe you'd love to just focus on college, but you got to deal with breakups and all the mental health issues. And everything else that you guys know about those challenges a lot better than us, but we hear about them kind of secondhand. So that's a little bit of background. We'll get into it more, but just want to know that we're a resource for you guys and want to support you in however we can. And even this initial idea is all based on your guys' feedback. So please keep it coming. We know we're going to iterate based on what people are using, not using, liking, not liking, etc. So without further ado, the fairy godmother of financial aid herself, Peg Keogh, who's out there in the Seattle area, my partner in crime. We do this probably more often than we should, Peggy, right? All day, every day. But Peggy, in addition to just being who I think is one of the most seasoned professionals in this niche field and world, I think has this great foundation of having gone through it with her own kids, with her twin kids, that they got their bumps and bruises, but had a great experience. So I think that makes her very empathetic to everybody else that's going through this. Peggy, if you want to introduce yourself before we get into the content.
Just real quick, my background was in the financial industry. And when my kids hit high school, I'd done some saving, but then it was like, all right, let's get my husband and I, let's get our heads around how this whole thing works. And was just shocked at how crazy complicated it was compared to when I was a kid, filling out an application in the backseat after a visit and throwing it, I'm dating myself, in the mailbox, literally. A lot more complicated now. So that's when I switched gears, had an aha moment, and just started focusing just on this piece. And have worked with schools locally where I am, some other schools. And it's just been a great partnership, because this is all we do. We get up every day and this is our why. This is Matt and our why. And we can complement what you guys do. We can go deeper and we can just support you. And really our mission at College Aid Pro, and I'll share the deck because we got it on the first page, and it's really, it's our why, is to end the student loan crisis by empowering families to shop smarter for college. And what it really means is, parents, I say this to parents all the time, they need to become informed consumers in this process. And the only way they do that is by educating them. And so we're trying to do everything we can to educate parents. And you guys are a huge part of that, right? That's part of what you're doing all the time with your students and everything. And so it's exciting. It's exciting to try and partner with schools all over the country, and let's get these parents schooled up and these students schooled up so that they're not reactive to the colleges. They can be proactive in this process. I was with my kids, and I didn't have any of the friction. I have a boy and a girl, so different kind of kids, and I didn't have any of the friction that I see all the time with families. It just doesn't have to be that way. It can be a positive chapter with families. So anyways, that's where we are at. So let's get rolling here. And if you have any questions, we love questions when we're talking about the appeal stuff or about anything, just put them in the Q&A. You can be anonymous if you want. They get captured as opposed to the chat. So just pop them in the Q&A, and we will send out a recording of this. So if you have to mute, if you have to go and talk to a student or whatever, don't worry. We're going to send it out so you'll have all of it. And please share it. Share it with everybody and anybody in your field that you think could benefit from our support, for sure. Okay, so there we are, the happy couple. So let's just take a few minutes. You guys know most of this stuff, but just a very quick review. So we're talking about these financial aid award letters that your students, some of your students that applied ED already have them, already got them, already made decisions. Probably. So there's different things that are going to be on the offer. There's going to be grants, which is typically the need-based aid, not always, and it's state, federal, and endowment money. So institutional grants. And there's going to be scholarships. So that's typically merit scholarships, right? Some schools call need-based grants scholarships just to make things a little bit more confusing. Then there's work study. Again, that's a need-based form of aid because the government's paying part of the hourly rate. And then there are your loans, and there's parent loans and student loans that will typically show up on these award letters. So those are the ways that they're going to discount the cost of college. So we do a webinar for parents where we go through several award letters. I just wanted to do one really quick for you guys, just to show one that I really like. So this isn't necessarily typical, but if we look at Whitman College, which is in Eastern Washington in my neck of the woods, small little great college, they're saying, okay, here's your award. You're getting 2 different scholarships. We're giving you a subsidized loan, and they're still calling it Stafford, which you see sometimes instead of direct. and you're getting work study. So that's your total award. Then they nicely spell out the cost of attendance. A lot of schools don't do this. Some schools don't even have the cost of attendance on the award. And it could be an old cost of attendance, but they do a nice job of detailing it. And then they do something that we don't see all the time, Matt and I don't see, is they actually break down the EFC for the family, the expected family contribution. And this was a divorced family, so it even breaks out custodial parent and non-custodial parent. So it's very easy to see that Whitman's giving the family about 24,000 and their calculation of need is a little bit more than 24,000. So they're pretty much meeting 100% of need. There might be a debate about EFCs, and that's something that can be discussed on appeal, which is what we're talking about today. So that's an example of a really nice award letter. Okay, so now the question is, kids get the awards, parents are looking at them, parents start to understand what they are and what the bottom line is. So how do you know if you received a fair award? That's the next question to decide if you're going to appeal. So why don't you take it from there, Matt?
Yeah, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump into our here quickly. And I know some of you are familiar with this. To others, this may be the first time you're seeing it, right? So our technology is designed to try to help everybody have a solution for every pain point of specifically this financial aid and scholarship process. First, we're shopping for schools. It's like I guess the first thing you'll notice is the EFCs are going to be staring the parents in the face here and the families in the face, right? Because I think one of the biggest challenges that counselors have in advising families is you guys are all over the cultural piece and what's going to be the right fit geographically. Is this somebody that's going to be comfortable at a big school versus small school? But like, how are you supposed to know if these are going to be good, affordable for families? Are they going to be a good financial fit? And you probably have enough experience to get an idea of, hey, are they a candidate for merit-based scholarships? But I think outside of anecdotally and your instincts, you don't really know if they're going to get financial aid or how much does the cost matter? What does this family have in savings? So we want families to be able to do that piece on their own. There's exceptions to the rule, but I think most school counselors that I have a relationship with are relatively hands-off on the financial piece. They're not going to get somebody's taxes and be able to make need-based financial aid eligibility assessments. So we want to help facilitate that, right? So families can answer a few questions and then just know right away, okay, what are my EFCs? And most families don't know that there's 3 different EFCs, okay? But more important than that is, well, what are these schools actually going to cost you? So we want to have just one net price calculator in kind of the same place so they can get an idea, where am I going to get financial aid and scholarships, et cetera. But when we have that foundation, it allows us right now, so I'm kind of skipping down to this feature here, because right now what we want families to be doing is uploading their financial aid offers, right? And as you all know, and Peg just highlighted, she showed a great one in Whitman, but most schools are confusing. So what we can do is we can just say, okay, my kid got accepted into Providence College and I'm going to upload the award letter. And what we're going to do is help them break that down. I'm just putting a dummy thing here, and help them figure out what's a need-based grant, what's a scholarship, what's a loan, and then really allow them to compare apples to apples so they understand their out-of-pocket net cost. Because we're going to send you the slide deck tomorrow, but we have an example of a bunch of different financial aid award letters. And some of the worst perpetrators, in our opinion, in my opinion at least, are those colleges that include the plus loan as part of the financial aid award. Some of these families will think they have a full scholarship because their award letter is showing that they don't owe anything, but that's including a $50,000 loan. And I'm sure many of you have had experience with this. So the first thing we want to do is help them understand what they've been offered. And then we want to flag it to say, did you get a good award? This is one of a great place where we can gut check them. Boston College, I can pick on them because they're in my backyard and they're a phenomenal school and they're not going to have any empty beds, but they traditionally under award people about $10,000. It's very common. And of course, that's unbeknownst to them. And I think as school counselors, we wouldn't really know that. We wouldn't know that this was a great place to push back. We wouldn't know that they got under awarded by 10,000. So we flagged that for them. to say you've been under awarded $10,000. You're a great appeal candidate. And here's what that looks like. And we'll talk about the mechanics, best practices over the next couple of minutes here. But this is what we think is a great resource to be able to say, okay, what are these schools going to cost me? And then once I actually get in, did I get a fair award? And this is a great place where they can gut check that as families, or you as counselors can gut check that, et cetera. But this is the first place we'd like to start is how did we do? Even if we got a great award, doesn't mean we're not going to try to push back and do better, but let's be able to answer that question first. And then once it is time to push back, we can talk about that now.
Can I just pop in? Because I just want to answer a question live that came up in the chat. And by the way, just a reminder to keep your questions in the Q&A. Asked what's the wait time? How long does it take to get that award letter after you're admitted? And sometimes it comes at the same time. So let me just be clear. What we're talking about are financial aid award letters. That never comes with your acceptance into the college. What might come with it, which is what you're referencing in the question, is, hey, congratulations, you got a provost scholarship. So that's merit aid, and that's coming from the Office of Financial Aid. They're already starting to discount the cost of college. They have no idea this family's ability to pay, and they don't care. They want the student, so they're starting to entice that family to accept at their school by lowering the price. So that can come at the same time. As Michael said in his question, there is no standard wait time if they don't send it. The best answer to a lot of questions for Matt and I in this process is it depends. And this is another one. It depends on the college. So I can't tell you exactly the amount of time. It could be a couple weeks later.
It could be a couple months later, right?
Yeah,
There's some of these Ivy League schools, the kids are getting accepted early, and they're not going to get their financial aid package until the first week of April. That's kind of like the biggest extreme. That's an extreme example, but they're out there. And so it could be on the day you're accepted, here's your full award, all the way to you're accepted, congratulations, sit tight for 4 months.
Yeah.
And then we'll tell you what it's going to cost you.
Yeah. And the reason I wanted to answer live is I wanted to make that distinction that getting a merit award, that's not the financial aid award letter. The financial aid award letter will have merit on it, but it will come from Office of Financial Aid. Whereas the merit comes from Office of Admissions. And a lot of families get confused by that, and they'll book a meeting with us and say, I've got my award letter. And it's, no, that's not the award letter. Financial aid hasn't done their thing yet. So hopefully that clarifies that for everybody. And Michael, that answers your question. So sorry to interrupt there, but I just wanted to.
No, it's a great call.
Get that in there. Okay. So let me hop back into my deck here. I don't know why it took me back to the beginning. So let me go over here. Okay. So now let's talk about, so we talked about how do you know if you have a fair award. So now let's talk about, should you always appeal, right? A lot of parents don't know that they can appeal, or they think it might hurt admission. We all know on this call, that's not the case. I just did a vlog about that, and we're releasing it so that parents don't have that stress. But let's talk about when it's a good idea to appeal and when it's not a good idea to appeal. So I'll start with the right side because it's a lot shorter list. What are bad candidates for appealing? Typically, if you're making a generalization, the public schools, the state schools aren't typically going to result in as successful an appeal as private schools. They're just not. But I will say that if the family has a legitimate reason to appeal, and the biggest one in this circumstance is their financial situation is different. So the seniors all reported on 2021. So if stuff happened in 2022 and is currently happening and their financial situation is a lot worse, definitely appeal, even if it's a state school, because the college doesn't know that. And depending on the college and their financial aid policy, that could basically be a lot of money in the family's pocket by letting them know, hey, 2022, this happened, I became disabled, here's our tax return, please, what's called exercise professional judgment and reassess our need-based eligibility. So if there's changes, and with COVID, this happened, it's a big time, right? It's been a big deal in all of our lives for a while now. Anything that's different, you took a one-time distribution that was an anomaly, anything like that should be a ding to parents like, yep, I should be appealing. But in general, if you don't have those situations, just the expectation should be, go ahead and try it. You're going to be out some time and effort, but it probably won't be as successful as the private colleges. And especially private colleges, I'm going to skip to the bottom of the list in Aqua, that are competing colleges. So makes total sense, right? Stanford isn't going to want to hear an appeal of, hey, we got this from XYZ school that they don't think is a competing school. But if it's one of the Ivies, they might sit up and listen. Hey, we want this kid and one of our competitors did better. Maybe we need to come to the table with more. So competing colleges is a really big one. And that's for need-based aid, but even more so for merit aid. You can appeal for merit aid for sure. So let's just go through this list here. I think I hit the next two. If there's any sort of financial change with COVID, with retirement distributions, absolutely makes sense to appeal. If you're divorced, separated, remarried, there's a lot of nuances. And especially when you get into the CS profile schools, huge nuances. And that's where we're referring to the IM versus FM colleges. IM is the institutional methodology, the CS profile schools. FM are the lion's share of schools that only require the FAFSA. Also, if you're a business owner, if you have families and you know that mom or dad's a business owner, that's a big one too, especially with the CS schools, but even with the other ones. It's just, should be the ding dings of, we want to think about appealing and it could be successful. Because if you think about it, even an extra, let me just finish and then I'll let you chime in. Even an extra $1,000 a year, that's $4,000 of extra money in that family's pocket. It's a big deal.
Sorry, buddy, but I got a good question, so I think it's worth breaking in here because the question is, do you recommend that families not submit their acceptance / deposit to a school until after they've received the financial aid award letter? And I might add to it, this is me adding on, after they've gone through the appeal process. And really, the answer is yes. Okay. And I think we know a lot of people make this mistake because they're so excited. They're so excited. They got into the school. They just want it official. Let me just make sure it's locked in. The schools are very strategic in that they lean on families to say, hey, if you want the best housing, you got to get this deposit in, you got to sign on the dotted line. And that's part of the game, right? We know, and we have contact with a lot of these colleges. So we get a unique insight in terms of how they operate in these types of tactics. And I understand the concern and I understand the mindset. That's not a judgment of the parents, but as soon as we accept that officially and put in the deposit, we are essentially giving up any odds of having some additional money. I'm not saying it never happens, but when we sign that and we say we're in, they truly know they've got us now. So there's some nuance there. Like, you don't want to be the one to say, hey, don't send it in, but then maybe there's even a perception that you cost that student the chance at getting some of the best housing. You got to walk that line a little bit delicately. But I would just educate it to say, you have to make a choice here. If you want to maximize your odds of getting this out of pocket price down, first, we got to wait for our award letter and submit an appeal. Okay. If the housing situation, or at least the perceived housing situation, takes precedent in your household, then that's obviously a family choice. But if you're asking me what's maximizing my odds of getting the best deal here, sit tight. And that's how I'd answer that question. But it's a great question. Sorry, Peg. Go ahead.
No problem. No problem. All right, let's move forward here. So you guys are going to get the slides, so I'm not going to hit on all of these. This will be a good thing for you to review with the recording. But on the next slide, we've got a good list of guideposts. I do want to hit bullet 1 and the last bullet. So early decision. This is a big one. We've already helped some families this year with ED1s, right? What are the implications? What are the limitations? So early decision, as we all know, there's a big admission bump for that, right? It's an admission play. It's not a financial aid play. You lose leverage when you go ED because you can't, all the stuff we're talking about, you can't play them off each other. You were generous, but this school gave 5,000 more of merit. Can you meet it? Can't do any of that because you just have that one offer. You can appeal. And I've done it successfully with families. All of us on the team have, but you do lose some leverage. So keep that in mind. My advice to parents is you should know for sure you can afford a school and have really good visibility into what your package is going to be before you apply ED. That's always my advice. And we can help with that. Our tool can help with that Matt was showing you. The last one that I touched on earlier is, depending on what you're appealing for is where the appeal goes. So if the student is appealing for more merit aid or merit aid, since they didn't get any and other schools gave it, that's going to be Office of Admissions. If they're appealing for need-based aid, then that's going to be the Office of Financial Aid. So it's not just one size fits all. It depends what the student and the family are appealing.
Peggy, let me just add on to each of those points there, because I think they're important ones. The first one, the ED one, now it has become universal where, and maybe you all read these because I know in most cases, you as the school counselor have to sign off when these kids go ED, right? To say to the best of our knowledge, if this kid gets in, they're going there. And I know that cannot necessarily be, it's not a good look on you. And I have some counselors take this very seriously if they don't end up going there and break that contract, right? But now all of them say, hey, you can back out of this deal, for lack of a better term here, for these three reasons. One of them is if you can't afford it, right? Now, we think the right thing to do, just like Peg said, is to make sure you understand about what that deal is going to be before you make that commitment and before you as the school counselor makes that commitment, right? And puts your name onto that thing. But you can walk away from it legally or whatever. That's probably too strong of a word, but you can walk away from it if you say that we can't afford this. Now, where I'm going with this is that where we have seen this uptick in successful ED appeals lately, since this has become a universal rule, is just having some language that says, even if it's a bit of an empty threat, that, hey, is clearly this is our first choice. It's why we put all our eggs in this basket and went ED. But we thought it was going to be a little bit more affordable than it is. And now we feel like we're still $8,000 away from being able to commit to it. And that has been that right there has been an effective tactic, because it is a real piece of leverage that family has. And the college knows, okay, they can back out of this if they think the price isn't right. It's the family that decides this, not the colleges. And then the other thing I'll add here in terms of, again, the last bullet point that Peg hit on, if we're talking about merit money, it's probably with admissions. If we're talking about need-based money, it's probably with financial aid. The other thing that I'll add, if it's merit money, we want the student to be the loudest voice in the room, right? They got this money because they were investing in the student and their overall application and resume. So we want them to be driving that conversation. Odds are improved when that happens. Now, plenty of 18-year-olds aren't comfortable in picking up the phone, but at least have them write a letter. Whereas if it's a more complex financial aid appeal, right? Hey, we're a business owner and we're challenging how you consider depreciation. That makes sense that it would be coming from parent or parents. So I think the voice in here is relevant too, in terms of who should be leading the charge. And again, every situation is unique, of course, but generally speaking, if it's a merit admissions, it's the student we're trotting out there on the front lines. And if it's financial aid, probably the parents. And then in both cases, there's a supporting role, a kind of layering voice that's going to be on there, depending on which scenario we're talking about. Okay, so let's get down to the mechanics of this, right? And just by way of background, pretty simple slide here, but there's a decent amount to unpack. And this is something that we have been working on for years. It was always 5 bullets until I think last, but this is not just us and our experience of having done this for a long time and a pretty big team of professionals that have do this every single year, many times over. But we now have college counselors on our team, financial aid counselors specifically, right? So the director of Harvard Medical School, Ryan Callahan, director of MIT Sloan School of Management, Josh DeMayo, those guys were both formerly at Boston College before, and some retired financial aid counselors. They're on our team. So we get this really nice insight into what happens during those appeal committee meetings, okay? And that, along with our experiences, helped inform our playbook, where we can say, we meet a couple times a week to talk about this. Here's our scenario. How do we go back to this school and maximize our odds of doing better, okay? The first one, it might sound super simple, bring color and background to the story. Ryan Callahan on our team, who's our Harvard guy, and Peg knows especially, right? Ryan hasn't smiled in probably 10 years, right? He's a serious dude. Okay. He's a serious dude. And so it's funny to think of him bringing like the sentimental element to it, but he coaches us, say, listen, guys, you know me, right? Like I'm here crunching numbers, trying to do my job, which means giving enough money to this family that they commit here, but we still make our margins as an institution. And that's the line I'm trying to walk. And if somebody comes in and picks up the phone and says, hey, the best day of our lives was getting accepted, and one of the worst days was a couple weeks later when we got the offer. And now I might have to tell my kid that they can't go to the school that they've earned the opportunity to attend, right? And I just don't want to brush that under the rug, because that type of sentiment really gets these people motivated to try to make it happen. And that's what we're trying to do. That's the first victory. Let's get our point of contact motivated to try to make this happen, okay? And spoon feed them, make their jobs easier. Tell them we did our homework and we figured out if you can come up with another $7,000, give them an exact amount, we will be able to make this happen, right? Peg talked about how important it is to have leverage. Okay, I don't want to belabor that point, but I went to a little school up in the Boston area called Stonehill College. It's relatively popular, or at least in this neck of the woods. I will make families apply to Bentley, who's our rival, right? Even if they hated it, and they have no intention of attending there, just so we can have that offer as leverage. If you loved RPI, you have to apply to WPI. And most schools have their kind of family and schools that they're direct competitors with. Okay. Now, number 4 here, this is really getting in the weeds, a PhD level appeal strategy. And for the most part, not universally, but for the most part, this only applies at private colleges. Okay. And most of these private schools, as you all are probably well aware, are going to want to look at the family's tax returns, right? Let us see your prior federal tax returns, all the schedules. If you're a business owner, we want all of those, and your W-2s. You guys know about the IDOC and different ways that these colleges verify, but they're mostly getting that information so they can challenge families' expenses, unbeknownst to. So Ryan, and turns out this is pretty common, he used to work for the IRS, and that's a natural transition. So they go through the tax returns and they go, okay, you're self-employed, you wrote off this piece of property. We're not going to allow that write-off. You wrote off depreciation on this building. We think that's a clever accounting thing. We don't count it at the college. You wrote off your, so they don't count X amount of expenses at their discretion, unbeknownst to the applicant. And you didn't know that those subjective decisions cost you out on a lot of financial aid. So you need to specifically challenge them on that. Did you not count some of our family's write-offs that the IRS said were completely legitimate? And if you can find a soft spot there, you're incredibly high odds of having a successful appeal. But again, most families are not aware that's a thing, and that's what happens. Okay. And then the last 2 here, pretty straightforward, good old fashioned persistence, tried and true negotiating tactic here. I know I'm not supposed to say negotiate, Peg, but the important part is we're demonstrating interest, but we also have to be kind here, right? Because again, these guys will always remind us too, if I'm getting screamed at or half threatened saying, you better do this or you better match this, I'm going, I don't want to work with this person for the next 4 years in this family. I'm not motivated to try to make it happen for this kid. So the tone is incredibly important here, right? Again, our get is to get them motivated to try to make this happen for us. And then finally, it's just, especially if we're in admissions, is making sure that the student has a voice. They're the one this college is investing in here. So we want that to come through in the process as well.
Can I just chime in for a minute? Because I had one question that I just would like to answer live. Somebody asked, so how would you appeal what kind of language would you use if you're appealing for merit? So it's just, first of all, as Matt said, and I got to emphasize this, that the student should lead the charge. I even have students lead the charge in need-based. You've got to follow whatever the process is that college uses. If it's send an email to this person who's assigned to your kid, whatever it is. But a lot of times it's that. So it's sending in some form or an email. If the student starts with, I can't wait to be a Bronco next year, whatever the mascot is, and be honest, but really say where they are, like what the student really wants. And then always, you were generous, but I got more money from XYZ school. And as Matt said, having a specific ask is really important, because if you just open it up and as one school gave 10, another school gave 20, a school could look at that and say, what are they looking for? Because we can't match it, but we could do 5,000, but then they're sitting there guessing, if we don't do it all, they might not come. So we're going to give that 5,000 to another family where it's more likely that's going to get that student to come. So you definitely want to have an ask, but that's a language you're using. And Max said in passing, it's not negotiate. And it's a big thing of me. It really isn't. You're having a conversation with them. Don't think I love going and buying a car, wheeling and dealing, right? You're not doing that with the colleges. It'll turn them off. And then it doesn't help your appeal results really, because they have other kids and other parents that are appealing and they'll give the money to them. So you want to keep that in mind, but that's the language you want to use. But if it's a need-based, the student can very gently allude to, I have a lot of siblings or whatever. My dad lost his job. My parents want to give you more details on that. So I've attached a PDF with some information from them. And so that's the way to do it.
Yeah.
And guide families to do it.
And two more. One of them is just a good question, which is, do they ever ask for these other offers from colleges? You have to anticipate it. It happens all the time, right? Sometimes they're going to take it face value, but especially if they're planning to move the needle, I would anticipate having to show those awards.
I usually tell people just send them, especially if you have a tight timeline, because if you don't, then the college comes back to you, because you want to get this, you want to know the appeal results before you say yes. Parents should, right? Because they got to know what's coming out of their pocket. So anything that can expedite the process.
And one more thing on the appeal front, actually, or if you want to finish here, Peg, whenever I start sharing again, I can put a pin on it and get back to another tactic you might consider for merit appeals.
Okay.
You can finish with the deck and then I'll jump in before we close here.
Okay, so we're good here. So Matt's going to talk about some more stuff about how we can support you. You're going to get these, but really, like we said at the beginning, we really want to support you guys. We want to be a team, right? You guys you're on the front line. Let us support you. Let us support your families, however it works best. As he said earlier, and I put it in the chat, we've got this dedicated email address that's brand spanking new. So counselor@collegeapro.com. Matt's going to be the one looking at it. I'll probably be the backup if he's off playing, not working for the day. So we're here to answer your questions, right? And then also Matt's going to talk about some stuff about how we can support you even further. I will put a link to, or you can pop it in, Matt, whatever, in the chat to his calendar. You can book 30 minutes with him, talk about your school district in more detail. We'd love to chat with you guys one-on-one of how we can make this work and support you. So this will be in the deck that you, so
yeah, if you can pop that in the chat, Peg, I just don't have it handy.
Yeah, I will.
That link handy.
Pop that in the chat right now, Matt's calendar link.
Yeah, so I'll hit on kind of some specifics in a second here, but let me just quickly talk about that appeal, the merit-based appeal again. Another thing to consider here is one of two things or a combination, if it makes sense, right? So when we're projecting costs here, and if I want to drill down to a particular school, okay, I can see how we got to our net cost. Was it need-based grants? Was it merit? Was it both? So St. A's is another relatively popular school up here in the New England area where we're projecting a $30,000 merit-based scholarship. If my kid got 25 or 26, actually, I would challenge them to say your net price calculator said I was going to get 30,000, which is baked into the algorithm here. So that's something that we've seen be successful in challenging merit-based aid. Or another thing that we'll have in here is the average GPA and test scores, but let's see, it might be in the financial aid tab actually. But what we'll also have for each of the schools here is their average merit-based award. Okay, so you can see at St. A's, 23,000. So if your kid gets 18,000, right, we've also seen successful appeals based on, hey, we didn't get the average here. Now that doesn't guarantee it, right? Nothing in this appeal process is guaranteed. And they could answer, yeah, your kid got less than the average. It's an average. But we've seen appeals be successful here just because, again, you're just being a really savvy consumer, being like, hey, we got $5,000 less than the average here. That is a deal breaker for us, or that could make all the difference in the world for us, however that's framed. But that's another
Yeah, just a little behind the scenes because Matt and I both talked to people that are behind the scenes. He's talking about Ryan, and I went to a conference, was talking to a guy at a university, and we actually had a breakout session on this. These guys, these colleges are nonprofits, but they are big business. And so when these appeals come in, it goes into their algorithms, and it's all about what's the likelihood if we give an extra $3,000 that this student is going to send in a deposit check. So everything you can do to counsel your families around, that's why the student leading the charge is so important, because if the college thinks, so this is just the parents trying to get that number as low as possible, they know these kids are applying to tons of schools because that's the norm now. Getting those families to put their best foot forward and presenting themselves to the college in the best way and having a direct ask. And what I've noticed over the last couple of years with COVID, sometimes we're pleasantly surprised. Wow, we were expecting them to come in at this, and they came in even higher. So I'm noticing a little bit more generosity, and we're talking maybe $2,000, but again, that's an $8,000 difference, right? With merit aid, it's really, Matt says this all the time, and I agree. This is the most fun part, right? The kids are excited, they're getting in, and the worst that happens is they come back and say, "I'm sorry, we can't do anything for you." And you have some time and effort. The family has some time and effort, but more often than not, unless it's just, I have a Maui condo that I want you to not look at, that's not going to work if you're an affluent family. But if there's grounds or if there's good competing offers, it can be successful quite often at the right schools.
Not about it. So and Mike, yeah, you guys all get this recording and slide deck. Feel free to share it with parents if you find that helpful. And then if you want, and I'm just putting this here now, I just put this Zoom registration link in the chat. Tomorrow, for all of our high school partners, we're doing, Peg and I, obviously very short notice here, and we'll keep you guys, give you some more lead time moving forward, but we're doing a presentation tomorrow, all focused on private scholarships, right? So we're really talking the class 2023. We always invite everybody, but right now it's like, okay, we got admissions applications off. We got FAFSA and CSS profile off. Now, how do we go find a few bucks out there? And I'm sure you guys are starting to get that influx of into the office. And that's kind of part of our MO here, is getting ahead of a lot of these questions and coaching folks up at scale here. To that point, and I see a lot of our buddies on here now, one thing that we do at school districts, right, and this is something that we've been doing for an awful long time and have just iterated over the years here, we do coaching throughout the whole process, right? So it usually starts in spring of junior year. We're talking to the junior class. Of course, we invite everybody, but just getting them coach up on, here's how this whole thing works, right? Here's how scholarships and financial aid works and EFCs, and here's how to find out if you're eligible.
Then I would ultimately love, and freshman, sophomore, junior, totally. The earlier these parents start learning, the better.
Right. And then 100%. And then we'll come back in the fall. There'll be some overlap there, right? First, we want to start that foundation of education before they go start shopping for colleges in a perfect world, right? So that can help inform those decisions, right? And then once it's game time, we'll talk in a little bit more, we'll get a little bit more granular, and then we'll actually go through FAFSA and CS profile line by line, and beyond that, just the strategies. Don't include your retirement. Make sure the 529 is under the parent name, not the student name. Don't put your home equity on the FAFSA, these types of things and common mistakes we just can't have people making. And then this time of year is private scholarships and IDOC and verification, right? We're coaching folks up about that. And then this was teaser preview into what we'll start getting really from the end of February through the beginning of April. Our coaching will all be around, how do we read these award letters? How do we go back and get more money? So you just got a good idea of what that presentation looks like.
Yeah. And we did have a question in the chat. Somebody said, can we share this recording with our senior parents? Yeah. I would say don't do that, because this is geared to you guys. You're going to be on our list. You're going to get this invite to invite your families to appeal to webinar number 4, right?
You're so strict, Peggy. I forget sometimes. I forget. You're right. Never mind.
I would say, wait, and pretty soon we're going to go over more award letters, because you guys have background knowledge and foundation. They don't. So we kind of whipped through it. We go more painstakingly through it for the parents, and I think it'll be much more beneficial. So I would wait to invite them to our appeals webinar that they'll be coming up soon.
Message received, buddy. And then the after May 1st, right? These kids and families have made their decisions. That's when we'll be coaching them up on, okay, how do we pay the bill? If we have to borrow, what are all of our options? How do we figure out the right one for our family? How do we execute it? If we have some savings, what should we know then? Do we use our 529 all up front? Do we spread it over 4 years? These types of questions. So that's something that again, book some time with me or send us an email if you're interested in figuring out how we set that up for your school. Happy to do that. Happy to put you in touch with other folks that have been working with us for years. And then obviously our technology itself, we talk about it. It's like the score and Naviance for financial aid, right? A lot of schools like to use this to complement those pieces of technology, or at least let their families know it exists. Again, we can talk about what that could look like for your school. And then again, keep an eye out tomorrow. This is our first one, little sneak preview here. We're going to be sending out a newsletter to you all every other week. And again, our kind of big takeaways being this dedicated help desk. And we're going to do this every other week, that we hope we can just become a part of your cadence. And we'll make sure that we're sharing this content with you all. And this is directly based on your feedback, right? As I was talking to a lot of my friends in this space, this was a big one that I never would have thought of. Give us stuff that's easy to share with parents, makes us look good, but it's providing a lot of value and hopefully making our jobs a little bit easier, where we can get ahead of some things. So we want to try to have all this digestible stuff that you guys can fire off and use as you see fit whenever. And then we'll also keep you posted. We'll give you more time on the events that we're doing for families, if you want to invite families to those. And then, just hear what's going on with your peers, right? Heller, who's I've been working with forever, who's at Beacon High School in New York City. I had a fun chat with her this week. So we want to give you guys some love and make sure you're learning from one another, what's working, what's not working, what are the pain points, how are we solving them. Anyways, this is just a little bit of a sneak preview for what you can expect in your inbox tomorrow. And then I'm Peg, I think you already shared my link. So if anybody wants to book a time with me, please do it. Because where we always start is I'm like, all right, what are you guys doing now? How can we help you? But at a minimum, we hope you just stay engaged with us. Like I said, we'll be doing this 12 Eastern time every other week. And
Michael's cracking me up because he was saying, okay, I'm not going to share it. I was cracking up openly. You got me going there, Michael. But when you should share this recording is with anybody you know who's doing what you guys do, all the counselors, anywhere. We just, like we said at the beginning, we just want to get this movement going so we can spread this throughout the country and help you guys and really change. Ultimately, it could change the way college is priced and what colleges are doing. Some colleges, especially, that are laughing all the way to the bank on the backs of some of our families. So this could be, it will be, not could, it will be very powerful. And you guys are a big part of it. And everybody's saying, thank you, thank you. So I'm so glad this speak for both of us. We're delighted. We were so excited for this today. And we're delighted that it was informative, and we look forward to many more of these going forward. And definitely book some time with Matt to chat and share our content in our newsletters with your families.
I really appreciate you guys showing up today too. We were a little bit nervous. I was nervous because I was like, is anybody come to this? Is it a good idea? So thank you for validating some of my fears there. And just anybody else, any other peers that you think might benefit, please invite them. And we want to grow this group, but I appreciate everybody showing up today, guys.
All right, guys, have a good one.
Thank you, Peggy.
Bye, buddy.
Bye, guys.